job at the Defense Department is to have plans for any particular contingency.
Including the contingency of basically
Any
invading
contingency
Denmark.
you need, we've got it. We've got a building full of planners, and we're prepared to give recommendations whenever needed.
So just be clear, you have plans to take Panama and Greenland by force if necessary.
I think the American people would want the Pentagon to have plans for any particular contingency.
Not for that.
Thankfully, we are in the planning business.
Speaking on behalf of the American people, I don't think the American people voted for President Trump because they were hoping we would invade Greenland.
Pete Hegseth is supposed to be serving as Secretary of Defense, but in reality, he comes across more like a Fox News personality who has suddenly been handed control of the most powerful military on the planet. And the question that keeps circulating around Washington is not if, but when Donald Trump will finally decide to remove him from that position. And the uncomfortable answer many people avoid saying out loud is that he will not. Not because Hegseth has proven himself capable, or because he has done anything meaningful to protect the country, but because he is exactly the kind of person Trump wants in that role, since they think alike, chase the same goals, and share the same priorities, and those shared priorities could come with serious consequences that may ultimately cost lives. And this concern became even clearer during a hearing when Congressman Adam Smith asked Hegseth a direct and simple question about whether there was any plan to use military force to take control of places like Greenland and Panama, and instead of giving a clear no, Hegseth leaned on vague language about planning, contingencies, and having teams that prepare for every scenario, which was not a denial at all, but rather sounded like someone who was entirely comfortable entertaining the idea of military action against sovereign nations. And if that alone does not raise alarm, then it suggests many people have not been paying close enough attention to the pattern of statements he has already made while standing behind a government.
And Mr. Secretary, you said the 99% down on border crossings and the border is secure. At the same time, we're going to take $1 billion out of the MILCON budget, out of building barracks, to send it for the border, and there's another 4,000 troops that we're planning on sending down to the border. Given that the border is secure, might you rethink that spending?
Well, sir, we are securing it. It is secure, but it's a manpower-intensive effort at the beginning.
Two different words there. It's either secure or secure, and it sounded to me like you said it was secure.
It is secure.
Okay.
What we're continuing to do is expand that and fortify it through infrastructure, which is a big part of the budget on the Department of Homeland Security side as well. So it's that $1 billion you're talking about was from the CR in FY25. We fully fund that back and more in FY26 with a recognition that we were dealing with the world as it existed when we came in. And the previous administration said they needed new legislation to secure the border. It turns out you just needed a new president.
I would point out
president with the Defense Department and DHS that was willing to go to the border and actually secure it, which is what we
not submitted a budget yet. So whether or not you're putting that money back in remains to be seen. You have definitely taken it out. And I think the obsession there, and I don't disagree, the border needed to be secure. But from a pure budget standpoint, let's just not keep the political focus on that. Let's make sure that we're funding some of the other priorities that we have. So when it comes back to acquisition reform and the chairman's point, it's our committee, certainly Congress is part of the problem. We set up a lot of requirements. Defense contractors are part of the problem. I'm curious, how would you get after reforming the culture at the Pentagon so that you can move faster, number one, and number two, how would you get after the defense contractors that push the requirements process? And specifically, what would you do about the requirements process to try to speed things up?
Well, first of all, I think gold plating is a real problem, sir. I mean, across the department.
Interesting to use the word gold in this particular context, but yes, I agree with you, actually.
We maybe could use a little bit more silver plating on occasion. A recognition that the 99% solution is oftentimes the enemy of the 85% solution that delivers 2 years sooner. And that's contractors and other companies wanting to do right, but trying to do too much and overpromise, and then they're under-delivering, and the warfighter...
Not always wanting to do right. In some cases, just wanting to make money, but yes.
The change is also in acquisitions about people. You need reformers in these positions. I'm here to be a disruptor of those processes. Our deputy secretary has extensive business experience. The types of people we're bringing in as undersecretaries have been disruptors and innovators in the private sector who recognize that bureaucracy can be dysfunctional and needs to be disrupted. So it's taking outside-the-box unique approaches. I mean, virtual design is a big example. How many times are we going to build something physically that takes a year to build when you could use AI and computing power, design it virtually, identify the flaws, and move more quickly, or create open architecture so you can.
Our
move
committee
systems
stands ready to
between.
work with
I mean,
you.
there's 500 different things we can do, and we're doing them.
Yeah, and I'm sincerely concerned about this. Is it the policy of the Department of Defense that we need to be prepared to take Greenland and Panama by force if necessary? Is this a policy that you have within the Department of Defense in accordance with the President's wishes?
I heard what you said about those two countries and saying we need to worry about China. Well, we are worried about China.
That wasn't my concern.
China's malign influence in Panama.
I was
the
concerned
recognition
with
that
us
if China has
saying
control
that
of
using
ports
military
or
force
malign
to take
influence
another
over the
sovereign
Panama,
country's territory.
we should pay attention to that.
Right.
So Panama is very key terrain that we've focused on, and we've been willing to focus
So we
on,
should
as
take it,
is Greenland
we should
key
take
terrain.
it by military force. They're important. I'm not going to argue with that.
The Arctic is
I'm
incredibly
arguing with
important,
the
and
using
adversaries are
our
trying to
military to
gain.
take it by force.
Our job at the DoD is to have plans. And
Do you have a plan for that?
Our job at the Defense Department is to have plans for any particular contingency.
Including the contingency of basically
Any
invading
contingency
Denmark.
you need, we've got it. We've got a building full of planners, and we're prepared to give recommendations whenever needed.
So just be clear, you have plans to take Panama and Greenland by force if necessary.
I think the American people would want the Pentagon to have plans for any particular contingency.
Not
and
for that,
thankfully,
in
we
my
are in the
opinion.
planning business.
Speaking on behalf of the American people, I don't think the American people voted for President Trump because they were hoping we would invade Greenland.
Let's go.
Going back to September 2025, a U.S. military operation targeted a boat in the Caribbean, leaving 9 people dead and 2 survivors struggling in the water, and according to reporting from the Washington Post, Hegseth had already issued a verbal order before the mission even began, telling forces to kill everyone, which led to a second missile being fired that killed the 2 remaining survivors, and legal experts quickly reacted by pointing out that a double-tap strike on survivors is not just controversial, but considered a war crime under the laws of armed conflict, with sources telling The Intercept that the entire chain of command could potentially be held responsible, and what makes it even more disturbing is how Hegseth responded when confronted, because he did not resign or apologize, but instead stood at a podium and said that based on what he understood, then and now, he fully supported the strike and would make the same decision again, essentially boasting about it. And just 2 days later, he posted a meme on social media showing Franklin the Turtle, a character from children's books, firing a rocket launcher from a helicopter at a boat as part of a Christmas wish list joke, which came right after 2 people had been killed in the water, showing a level of detachment that raised serious concerns about his judgment. And this is the person currently leading the Pentagon. While Trump initially tried to create some distance by suggesting he did not want a second strike, but ultimately never removed Hegseth, because this kind of behavior is exactly why he was chosen, as Hegseth spent years on Fox News pushing for fewer restrictions on the military, calling the laws of war outdated and even stupid, while openly defending soldiers accused of war crimes and turning that stance into his public identity, something Trump supported then and continues to support now, which became even more visible when the United States and Israel launched joint strikes on Iran in February 2026, and Hegseth suddenly began appearing at the Pentagon podium every day, holding more press briefings than he had during the rest of his tenure combined, with CNN reporting that he seemed to be performing for an audience of one by echoing Trump's messaging, praising the attacks as a form of negotiating with bombs, while claiming Iran's air force had been wiped out and its missile program effectively destroyed, even as reports indicated that around 2,900 people had died, including at least 1,700 civilians. And during one of those briefings, Hegseth openly talked about having a target list ready that included bridges, power plants, and other civilian infrastructure, which under the Geneva Conventions is considered a war crime, yet he said it on camera without hesitation. And at the same time, in the middle of an active conflict with Iran, he fired Army Chief of Staff General Randy George along with several other senior leaders, including the head of the Army's Transformation and Training Command, and the Army Chief of Chaplains, with leaks suggesting that George and Army Secretary Driscoll had refused to remove black and female officers from a promotions list, meaning Hegseth removed officials who would not comply, leading to nearly 24 high-ranking officers being fired, sidelined, or blocked from advancement, many of them women and minorities, with little to no public explanation. And this all happened while the country was engaged in an ongoing war, raising serious questions about leadership priorities. And this is the same individual who told Congress he has plans for every possible contingency, who refused to rule out military action against Greenland or Panama, and who approved a strike that killed survivors in the water before defending it publicly. And even before the war began, he reportedly invited Elon Musk to a classified Pentagon briefing about potential conflict with China, and later shared sensitive war planning details through a signal chat, actions that a Pentagon watchdog said put U.S. personnel at risk and that would likely have led to court-martial for any active duty soldier, yet Hegseth faced no such consequences and instead continued holding press briefings and appearing in primetime coverage, while also restricting journalists from photographing him during the war because he did not like how the images looked, which added another layer of concern about priorities during a serious military situation. And back in that hearing room, Congressman Adam Smith directly told him that the American people did not vote for Trump with the expectation of invading Greenland. Yet Hegseth offered no clear response and once again leaned on vague language about contingencies until time ran out. And that is the current Secretary of Defense. And the reason Trump has not removed him is not because he is seen as a problem, but because he represents exactly what Trump wants in that role. Someone who does not challenge decisions, does not emphasize RISU.
Prepared to give recommendations whenever needed.
So just be clear, you have plans to take Panama and Greenland by force if necessary.
I think the American people would want the Pentagon to have plans for any particular contingency.
Not for that.
Thankfully, we are in the planning business.
Speaking on behalf of the American people, I don't think the American people voted for President Trump because they were hoping we would invade Greenland.
Let's go back to September 2025. The U.S. military hits a boat in the Caribbean. 9 people dead, 2 survivors clinging to the wreckage in the water. Then, according to reporting from the Washington Post, Hegseth had already given a verbal order before the operation began. Kill everybody. So a second missile was fired. 2 survivors in the water. Killed. Dead. Legal experts called it immediately. A double-tap strike on survivors is not just controversial. Under the laws of armed conflict, it is a war crime. The entire chain of command, sources told The Intercept, could be held liable. Now here is the part that should burn into your brain. When confronted about it, Hegseth didn't resign, he didn't apologize. He stood up at a podium and said, "From what I understood then and what I understand now, I fully support that strike. I would have made the same call myself." He bragged about it. Then, 2 days later, he posted a meme on social media. Franklin the Turtle, a children's book character, firing a rocket launcher from a helicopter at a boat. Posted by the Secretary of Defense of the United States, captioned for a Christmas wish list. 2 people were just killed in the water, and this man posted a children's cartoon. That is who is running the Pentagon. And Trump? Trump initially tried to distance himself, said he didn't want a second strike, but he never fired Hegseth, because this is what Trump selected him for. Hegseth spent years at Fox News publicly and privately lobbying Trump to untie the hands of the military. He called the laws of war outdated. He called them stupid. He defended soldiers accused of war crimes and turned that defense into his brand. Trump loved it then, Trump loves it now. So when the US and Israel launched joint strikes on Iran in February 2026, who was standing at the Pentagon podium every single day? Hegseth. Holding more press briefings than he had in his entire tenure before the war started. CNN reported he was performing for an audience of 1, doing exactly what Trump hired him for, cheering it all on. Calling it negotiating with bombs. Iran's air force is wiped out, he said. Their missile program functionally destroyed. 2,900 people dead in Iran, at least 1,700 of them civilians. And Hegseth told reporters the U.S. had a target list, locked and loaded, of bridges, power plants, and civilian infrastructure. Hitting civilian infrastructure is a war crime under the Geneva Conventions. He said it out loud, at a press briefing, on camera. Meanwhile, in the middle of an active war with Iran, Hegseth fired the Army Chief of Staff, fired General Randy George. Also fired the head of the Army's Transformation and Training Command and the Army Chief of Chaplains. The reason that leaked? George and Army Secretary Driscoll had refused to remove black and female officers from a promotions list. Hegseth wanted them gone. They wouldn't do it, so he fired the people who said no. Nearly 24 top officers removed, fired, sidelined, or blocked from promotion under Hegseth. Many of them women, many of them minorities. No public explanation given for most of it. And he fired the Army Chief of Staff in the middle of a war. Think about that. A sitting Secretary of Defense overseeing an active military conflict with Iran, firing decorated senior commanders, not for misconduct, but because they wouldn't discriminate against their own officers. This is the man who told Congress he has plans for any contingency. This is the man who won't rule out invading Greenland or Panama. This is the man who had survivors killed in the water and then called it the right call. Before the war even started, Hegseth invited Elon Musk to a classified Pentagon briefing about potential war plans with China. He leaked war plans through a Signal chat. A Pentagon watchdog said he put U.S. personnel at risk. Any soldier in the actual military would have been court-martialed for the same thing. Hegseth got a press briefing and a prime-time slot. He also banned journalists from photographing him because the pictures were unflattering in the middle of a war. He was worried about his photos. Back in that hearing room, Smith told him plainly, the American people did not vote for Trump because they were hoping to invade Greenland. Hegseth didn't push back. He didn't have a real answer. He just hid behind the word contingency and ran out the clock. That is the Secretary of Defense of the United States. And Trump will not fire him, because Hegseth is not a liability to Trump. He is the product. He is what happens when you put a man in charge of the military who thinks the laws of war are stupid, who thinks surviving an attack means you still deserve to die, who fires the people who say no, and who treats a live combat operation like a Fox News segment. Here is what you need to understand. The question is not whether Pete Hegseth should be fired. Every serious national security expert in this country knows the answer to that. The real question is why Trump won't do it. And the answer is simple. Trump doesn't fire Hegseth because Hegseth is doing exactly what Trump wants. A Secretary of Defense who doesn't push back, who doesn't stress the downsides, who cheers the bombs, who covers the kill order, who fires the generals who disagree, who calls it all righteous. That's not a bug in this administration. That's the design. And while Washington debates the politics, real people are dead. Survivors killed in the water, civilians in Iran. And the man who signed off on it is still standing at that podium, still talking about target lists, still threatening to restart the bombing, still bragging that he'd make the same call again. Nobody is stopping him. That should make you furious.